So we Jews and Jewish adjacent folk are pretty keen on asking questions. It's the Jewish book of why, not the Jewish book of because I said so. Thank you. Asking questions, it's baked into Passover. But what happens when a question leads to disaster? That's what we discover in our Torah portion this week, Emor. Emor includes lots of laws on holiness for the priest, and then it ends with a story of a half-Israelite. He has a mother who's an Israelite, and a father who's Egyptian. He gets in a fight, and he ends up blaspheming God. He somehow speaks irreverently of God. And so the people ask, what do we do? So they go to Moses. What do we do, Moses? Moses says, I don't know, let me ask God. So he asks God, and God says, stone him. And they do. And so it's a troublesome story. And so the rabbis need to dig in. Okay, what really happened? And there's one midrash that elaborates on the story. It says that a fight broke out because the half-Israelites sneered at the previously mentioned law about the bread of display. And the way he asked his questions led to blasphemy. It was quite the story. I actually had to pull up a few different midrashim and commentaries, so let's break it down. First, this half-Israelite is talking about the bread of display. What is that? Well, a few verses earlier, the Torah says that the high priest is supposed to lay out 12 loaves of bread on a table in the tabernacle, laid out before God, and then he'll eat them. He and his sons will eat them on Shabbat. So that's what this blasphemer is apparently talking about, the setup of 12 breads in the tabernacle on Shabbat. But an interesting point is that this is, the rabbis say, old bread. Basically, they say, okay, if we take the Torah, we have to bake this bread before Shabbat, lay it out on Shabbat, and then we eat it the following Shabbat. So by their math, because of the number of days, and if there's a holiday and everything, it could be anywhere from 9 to 11 days from baking to eating. And so it's cold and a bit stale. And so this is why the half-Israelite sneered and asked his question. He says, surely a king eats warm bread, so why would we put before God the stale, cold, 11-day-old bread? Now, part of the issue here is I actually get the question. I think the question makes sense. Now, God doesn't need the bread, but we have this idea in Judaism of hidur ha-mitzvah, of beautifying the mitzvah, of making it elaborate, elevating it, right? The Torah is not dressed in rags, but in a beautiful cover with crowns. We don't drink Kiddush, our wine, from a red Solo cup, usually. Maybe in college, but from a nice, shiny Kiddush cup of some sort. And so, of course, it makes sense that warm bread would be better than cold bread. We try to put our best foot forward for God. So what's the issue with his question? Right? Why is it a problem that he asks about this cold bread? Well, Rashi explains by adding a word. He says he doesn't just ask the question, but he asks it mockingly, with a sneer. And in so doing, he blasphemes God because his tone is improper, is impious before God. So in this view, it's not that he asked a question, it's how he asked his question. It wasn't out of genuine curiosity. It wasn't out of care for God or this hidur ha-mitzvah. It was out of maybe a contempt for our tradition or a disdain for the community norms. You do it that way? You eat that? I would never. That's his tone. And so this teaches us not to avoid questions. Heaven forbid, we're Jews. It's in our holidays. But to make sure that our heart is in the right place. We ask questions all the time. Maybe it's a pointed question at our spouse or partner. Maybe it's an interrogation of our kids' behavior or whereabouts. Maybe we're looking into new policies or programs or ideas at work. Are we doing so with a pure heart when we ask these questions? Are we asking these questions for the betterment of our loved ones, our peers, our friends, or coworkers? Or are we doing so mockingly, with a sneer, with judgment? Let us continue to ask great questions, and let us do so not with a sneer, but with an open mind and an open heart. And we say, Amen.
Amen.
We pause for a few moments to think about the questions we ask.